All right, we are back in the SSE studio. I hope we had most people were able to view it. As I understand, we had a small number of people who had some struggles there in the beginning, but it looks like people have been able to view the video, which is great. It's a shorter video than the extended version that we will also make available to everyone else. And I have now a number of questions that have been coming in, and I will try to post one question to each in the panel. If you have any more questions, please take the moment now and write them in the Q&A in Zoom, and we will answer them hopefully before the session ends. We try to go till 4 o'clock, so about 19 minutes. I know we have Gunilla Carlsson on the line, and let's see if we can just make sure that all our panelists are there. Please make your videos available. And I have a question for Gunilla. I have a question also for Peter Stein coming in. And I also have one for Swedfund. There we have Gunilla. Hello, Gunilla.
Hello.
And welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking part in this video with us. Really appreciate that. Of course, we also made your part also a little bit shorter in this shorter version, but we have a longer in the other. So one question for you, Gunilla, is from one of the viewers here is, how does the Global Fund operate today that you are part of? And what's the view on Africa with the Global Fund?
So the Global Fund is one of the biggest money provider in global health and still a giant when it comes to fighting AIDS, TB, and malaria. And I must say, working still a little bit traditional with more of commodities and inputs. But I think now we have to look to the systems and the know-how around access to health for all. So it's kind of interesting now to follow the new strategy work and also to work more on pandemic preparedness that's also coming up now due to COVID. So in one way, it's an old style giant in development assistance, but at the other time, I think a precondition also for have inclusive growth and support to governments in low-income countries. In health, I think the investment case will also be there, as you spoke about, with a tail in the bigger investments. Yeah.
Is the Global Fund, this is a question from me, but is the Global Fund also involved with investments, or how does the Global Fund operate in the region, in Africa in general?
Mainly it's thanks to big grants to the countries themselves to set up their systems and to be able to focus on the 3 diseases within their own health system. But of course, we also have these ecosystems working with UNITAID and others to make sure that we also are better in innovation. And I think the link that you're referring to between classical development assistance and venture capital could be further explored in the future, but that is a question for perhaps Swedfund and equally also for taxpayers if they would like to be a little bit more, to be a little bit less risk adverse, I would say.
Okay, thank you, Gunilla. Well, then let's go over to Swedfund since you mentioned we have one question for Swedfund. Karin, you're with us. Hello, thank you for participating in this video with us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And the question here is from, how does Swedfund reach SMEs in East Africa, and how do you see the connection of financing large companies and SMEs?
Yes, when you look at the mission that Swedfund has, it is to fight poverty by sustainable investments in developing countries, and we have approximately 60% of our portfolio in sub-Saharan Africa. When it comes to investing in SMEs, it's just as Gunilla just said, it's not possible for us as an investor to invest directly in an SME. Instead, what we do is that we work through the fund instrument to reach small and mid-sized companies, and we also use bank investments. So with financial intermediaries, we can earmark money and direct them towards the SME sector.
Thank you. Also have one question here from one of the viewers to the panel. I think we can post it to Gunilla. The question is, what additional needs are there from actors in the Team Sweden, including actors like SIDA, Swedfund, to assist the private sector to further engage in East Africa? Are you still with us, Gunilla?
Hello. Sorry, I'm trying to respond to that in the chat.
Oh, okay.
I'm still in the chat, so that's why you don't see me. Again, I think we have to remind ourselves official development assistance is mainly to address people living in poverty and not to promote business and entrepreneurs. And that is where I see an increased role for venture philanthropy and other actors to take on that role and perhaps to inspire development assistance to become a little bit more engaged in what drives development, and that is private sector. But it is really a tough discussion because it shouldn't be subsidies to corporates. So from my side, I think it's more interesting to look to the growing markets of company like MTI and others that are there to unite, and also that you have far more now social impact investments, and that's very promising.
Also, in our video, Dr. Slaa, you talk about economic diplomacy as the future also here. Could you elaborate a little bit on this in relation to this question also?
Thank you, Pontus. Referring to economic diplomacy, this is a political approach from our side, but I should say also the countries of the Nordic are now using economic diplomacy as well. Now, as I said in the main presentation, economic diplomacy is basically bringing the relations between the people of the Nordic countries to the people of East Africa. So instead of depending on development cooperation, now we would like to promote more development, businesses and trade. So it's not only the economic development that we are emphasizing on, we emphasize on the trade and on businesses, because this, at the end of the day, as I said, is more sustainable than depending on economic, on just development assistance. Now, when we come down to the level of the people to people, that means business between the people of the North, people of the Nordic countries and the people of East Africa, it means, well, we will avoid the situation that can happen when you have donor fatigue normally, because at the end of the day, donor fatigue can arise when people get tired giving in money, but they don't quite see the outcome. And this is what has happened over the years. We have been receiving money, and in most cases, people are complaining that we are giving money to the developing countries, but we don't quite see the results. In a way, that is true, but on the other hand, it also, I think, is not quite true, because a lot of work that has been done, a lot of development that we have achieved today is mainly because of the development assistance that has been received from the North, and basically from our Nordic countries, for example, in the area of schools. A lot of the schools that have been built were built with money from your country, from the taxpayers' money of Sweden, of Norway, of Finland, and of the Nordic countries, and the Western countries in general. So much has been done, but at the end of the day, what we are saying now is that, okay, let us come out of that, let us go into business, because at the end of the day, business is more sustainable. When the people of the North and the people of East Africa do business, that generates labor, more employment in Africa is generated. Once you generate, then you also generate the income in the pockets of the individuals, but then you are also giving those people in Africa purchasing power. Therefore, we can trade between ourselves rather than just depending on assistance that goes maybe into specific activities that are done by the government. Of course, that will continue for some time to come. But at the end of the day, people themselves can contribute to their own development at the same time, interacting with the people of the North.
Thank you, Dr. Slaa. And on that, Peter Stein, hello, you're with us. Thank you also for taking part in this video. Great input, and you have so much more to say, I know, and we hope to see more of you in future talks on East Africa in the future. In relation to this, we have a question on and I'm not sure if you can answer this question, but what can history tell us about how we have how Sweden has approached Africa?
Well, thank you, Pontus, for having me here. You said you have much more to say. I'm not sure that everyone wants to listen to too much by me, but I'll try to be short. I think one very important lesson, if you look at the history of Swedish companies, is that they have approached Africa in very similar ways that they have approached other parts of the world. And this may sound irrelevant, but I think it's important to understand that there's very little that is more magic about Africa than other parts of the world. That are challenges and opportunities. And Swedish companies historically have succeeded by adapting to local cultures together with bringing Swedish expertise and knowledge. And when it comes to do business in Africa, I think one important point is that it's a business culture which is important that you are present, that you identify good local partners and
Yes. Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you very much. I also have one question here from a young listener, young professional. Hello, and I think I will ask this question to the panel. We'll see who can answer this one. Hello, what would you advise a young professional in Sweden that has a big interest of being part of the growth of the East Africa region? How should one proceed if you have ideas that you would like to take further? Jan, maybe. How could the Swedish East African Chamber of Commerce help this young professional?
In general, so we will be happy to, of course, advise and then see if take some background and try to find an interesting way going forward. And several of our members will work with interns and internships. We, Swedish East African Chamber of Commerce, do it to a certain extent, so that could be an opportunity. We have quite a lot of pro bono actions ongoing, which involves quite a lot of East African members, East African partners. So I'll be happy to take a chat with the young professional. Sorry, I didn't catch your name, but you're most welcome to take contact and so write your information in the chat, and I'm sure I can get it from Pontus, and I'll come back to you.
Yes, I can also say that with MTI Investment, the project I'm involved with, I have a number of young people contact us about ideas that they want to do. We also have Nordic, the Swedish organization that is also very active in the region in Rwanda. So that's someone to reach out to. We've taken interns and they have been to the region. And another approach is, if you are attending university or a business school, why don't you take the opportunity to start up a business with a focus on East Africa, and you have a number of actors to reach out to. I have another question for you, Jan. What will be the focus areas of SWEAC going forward?
Thank you. SWEAC, we are member driven, so we are all activities we try to do is done to the benefit of our members. They are categorized into different business areas, as I mentioned earlier: ICT, health, green city, impact, and investment. And most of our members had a focus on investment and establishment and projects that was pre-pandemic, and these needs have, as far as I know, not changed very much during the pandemic. So all the needs in Africa and in East Africa that was there to be solved and challenges to be met will still be there. So from our point of view, we are following our members. We try to work with, connect with knowledge to collaboration and networking. So I believe we try to find a new format to make the contact and the connection between local partners and the business, the export companies in Sweden. So I do know a couple of members that have come into this and are solving pandemic-related challenges, but most of the companies are more traditional to the African the challenges in general in East Africa.
I have thank you very much, Jan. I have a couple of questions that are for Dr. Slaa. First one is condolences on the passing of your president. But how is the transition going now, and how is the new president, the first female president in East Africa, changing the landscape and opportunities for investors?
Thank you, Pontus. Thank you also for the condolences. We have received condolences also from the Swedish government and therefore from the people of Sweden as well, in that sense. And the Swedish government was represented by the embassy in Dar es Salaam because of the pandemic situation. So we very much appreciate. The change has been very swift. As you may be aware that we got the death happened on the 17th, evening of the 17th. And already on the 18th in the morning, we had the president. Now, I think that is something that is very uncommon in many countries, a very swift transition. This is because of the constitutional framework. And it has been in our constitution since 1977, that if such a situation happens, what procedure should be followed. It was already in the constitution. So this is a very democratic process, and the changes took place very swiftly. Let me say that the new president, the current president, the first female president in East Africa, was the vice president. So you can see how easy that transition is. They come from the same political party. The policies that they had been following for the last 5 years are still the same policies, with only one difference. The biggest difference was that the first 5 years, really the country was fighting against corruption, against drug trafficking, promoting major businesses, and trying to promote activities that we think the country was very much behind. For example, the social welfare, the rights of individuals, for example, the rights of women, particularly in education, in health. I think the first 5 years were spent on that. Now that can be seen by some people as a rigid 5 years. So the current 5 years now that Mama Samia has just started, actually the coming 4 years. This is a liberalized kind of approach. And from the first speech that she had given, I think we can see that there is an opening. There is more liberalization when it comes to businesses. There is more, I think, free access to the media, which was not very much there in the first 5 years. There is more access to social services as well, particularly social media, including the press. I think there's a big change big shift from the first 5 years and the current 5 years.
Yes, thank you.